And welcome to this post All-Star break edition of Bury Your Bookie. I'm Jeff DeForest, and happy to be joined here by Mike Jones, a late substitute. He came in the ninth inning to relieve as Scotty M had an emergency. Usually joins us on Wednesday, so we're going to get a triple dose of Mike this week because, of course, he was brilliant with us on Monday and always is with us on Thursday. Michael, how are you? Thanks so much for late minute substitution.
I'm great. Your poor viewers today, a little too much, huh? Well, we'll try to get them some winners here to make up for it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I feel guilty because I really felt like I put together kind of a rambling piece of shit yesterday. I'm often self-critical. I was thinking as I was doing a show, geez, did I pick anything? Did I give out any kind of insight whatsoever? And I kept thinking, no, you got to hit on something here soon. And I just didn't want to subject the people to it 2 days in a row. So happy to have you on board. I was largely panning the All-Star game. We were looking at the field for the home run derby. You didn't have any of the big shots in there. Actually, this was kind of reflected when they had the home run derby to decide the game afterwards, where you're asking yourself, where's Ohtani? Where's Judge? You did get Schwarber out there, who ultimately ended up winning the game for the National League, 3 for 3 on home run swings. But yeah, I thought the home run derby actually delivered a little bit. It
Yeah.
turned out to be pretty exciting, with the exception of Jazz Chisholm's 3 home runs. Everybody performed reasonably well in the first round. It was a razor thin margin that decided whether Raleigh would go on to the second round. I don't know how they measure that, by the way. How much credibility do you believe in those measurements where they break it down to a half an inch as to how far a home run ball was going to go? I mean, if the ball banks off the Sitco sign at Fenway, do we really know how far it would have gone in reality? And can we measure it that finitely that you can get it down to a half an inch? But I really thought, in general, the home run derby turned out to be very exciting, and the All-Star game as well.
Yeah, actually, it was. I tuned in a little bit. I got a little tip from my old baseball coach buddy out in Oklahoma, and he told me that his son was a double A roommate of Cal Raleigh. So he said, we're going after the Big Dupper. And I didn't even know the nickname. And all of a sudden, he's telling me all this. I started watching, and then he gets the break by, like you said, a half an inch to get into the semifinals.
Yeah.
I guess they somehow measured a home run and gave him because he had the ball went some different. I don't know how they even did it, but I heard it was 471. It was going to be a swing off. Then a couple minutes later, they said that Raleigh got in over Rooker, and then you had the situation where now he gets in and then he performs and he ends up winning the thing. And then last night was an interesting final. I fell asleep. I had to go rewatch it early this morning and seeing how ESPN reported it. And then, Tim Kirchin and all the guys, Perez thought it was a great way to end. The players were into it. If you're a fan, it's got to be fun. Yeah, you get your ticket not for the home run derby, but then you get some extra home run balls getting hit out, extras innings in the stands and stuff like that. I mean, you got to put some spice into this thing. It's not like the old days where all these guys wound up and wanted to play. The Pete Rose running into Ray Fosse was one of the most famous plays in
Sure.
football. Pete always played every game like it was his last in the Super Bowl of baseball. And, I kind of thought it was a really good couple of days for Major League Baseball. The only big problem I see is, again, it's promoting the long ball, which isn't really all of baseball. What you're going to get with that is a little extra strikeouts, and the fundamental side of the game is going to be different. But that's what these kids do today. They want exit velocity off the bat. They want to hit the ball hard, and home runs seem to, pull everybody in. So interesting
Funny,
times.
well, one of the biggest plays in the game that ended up nodding the score at 6 was Quan getting up there, a contact hitter who I believe is second or third in the league in terms of the lowest strikeout ratio. And he's going against Diaz, who has his game face on. Diaz is throwing some wicked stuff, didn't appear to be off his game at all. Quan files off a bunch of pitches, and what turned out to be the biggest hit was this dribbler to third base that he beat out.
Right?
And you could see this guy motoring down the line. He looked like Houston McTeer back in the days when this guy was the top sprinter in the country. And you're thinking that's as big a part of the game, and it became a monumental factor as a guy hitting a 3-run homer. So,
Yeah.
that's part of the subtlety that used to be some of the appeal of baseball, and seems to have gone awash because of everybody's obsession with the idea that chicks dig the long ball, and apparently everybody else does as well. All right, from a betting standpoint, and we were talking about this just before we started the show, and you have an interesting theory with some stats to back it up. That's what I always love about you, Mike Jones, is that you're a numbers guy all the way through. But I'm thinking too, and as we're doing these shows, sometimes you're thinking that do people really care about the side and the over under? Because we've been discussing prop bets and in-game betting, and you're saying there are incredible margins and good reason, valid reason for. There's never a new game invented in the casino that is favorable to the players. They'll come out with Caribbean stud poker. Guess what? You're getting clobbered on that if you can still find it somewhere. Or some new variation of Texas Hold'em. Rarely does a new table game come into existence where the favoritism is going towards the players. And that seems to be the case with sports betting, with all of these props. And you were saying that this is, I mean, we may as well accept it. Skeezers at Caesars really need to maybe start going in another direction when it comes to even talking about wagering.
Yeah, this is the interesting part. I heard a recent story from a friend of mine who'd been successful at the Hard Rock, and he had mentioned to me about comps and being controlled, being pulled back on the amounts that he was allowed to bet on a baseball game. And he said because they're not really getting a lot of rate straight bet line action on a game. People aren't betting to win a baseball game, which, if we have to go back in time, bookmakers in the old 80s and 90s probably thought that the best edge for a player was baseball because there weren't money lines back then in the other sports. It was just basically to win a game. You always had to bet a point spread in basketball or a point spread in football. And now you have the interesting parts where baseball was the one game where you bet to win. So bookmakers always felt baseball was a bad time of year for them. Now, fast forward this to now, where my buddy gets a conversation and is being told that 80% of the bets on baseball are player props, live betting, and totals. So he doesn't get what he should get normally as a comp for betting baseball that the Hard Rock provides. And now this is a Hard Rock, which is more or less not a daily fantasy sports entity that was like DraftKings and FanDuel. So you look at they've started as a regular book, and they've kind of turned their audience toward this and the viewership and whatever they're looking to get as far as their customer base. I find it very fascinating. And then you listen to the guys that I've listened to handicap forever. And, I know you did shows in the 90s. You probably could run this through your guys and see what they're doing and what they're finding. I know they probably have stuck to their guns being our age group. But, man, maybe you got to adjust and make these different games. I mean, I'm just looking at the props for the golf. There is a prop out there now that I see on a website where you could bet without Scotty Scheffler in the field, without Rory McIlroy out the field, without Scotty Scheffler, Rory McIlroy, and John Rahm in the field. So the odds come down. But all that means is that if one of those guys come in top three, your fourth place finisher is the winner. So just very interesting how they come up with all these things. And I think what happens, the intrigue might make guys like us take a look at it and say, I'm going to try it. But I also talked to one of the biggest operators in the world. And he called live betting a godsend. This is going back a couple of years. His conversation was he could not get over how everybody acclimated to a live bet. And I've talked to guys who weren't lifelong bettors and talking to them, and they also said, I feel much better. I don't have to rush home before 1 o'clock kickoffs in football. I can open my door up at 1:15. I can see a couple of plays and then make a bet. They like it more. So this is where I think it's all about to change, and I think you're seeing it in volume areas, and that was just one telling story that I got in the last week.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you 100% because I was talking to an old school guy. He was a longtime casino operator in Atlantic City, and he's now down here at Hialeah Park. And he actually runs one of the betting apps that's an offshoot of the Hard Rock as part of this very complicated set of rules that the state put forward about exclusivity and who has a chance to actually take sports wagering. And he was telling me that his thing now, as old school as he is, he loves coming home during the football season and making small nominal wagers on in-game betting. And just sitting there and having a good time punching away and making wagers as the game progresses, that it's far more interesting to him than the old school stuff of taking the point spread, trying to pick a side, and maybe even getting involved in a total. So, yeah, the whole wave of wagering has changed. Naturally, you said the books were cleaning up, right? The margins were incredible by comparison to what you were experiencing.
Yeah. I mean, like for instance, so you go on a site and the tennis match is only because the lines is minus 700, take back 500. You immediately look at that line and say, okay, that's a big line. The bookmaker's not taking it. As soon as that first serve goes up, they throw the line out. Now, there's barely a point scored in the game in a 5-set match. Now the stretch is 900, 400. So they've immediately calculated $100.50 in each side of the bet just after the first serve. So it's like, yeah, you can't get the bet and they don't provide it, but if you go to the live table, they give it to you, and that's how they do it. And I find this to be a very, very fascinating, gearing more toward the bookmaker's edge. You really got to kind of really dig in and do more handicapping. It's not this fly by night thing. I let it feel I read with this team doing this. It's going to take a lot of work. So if we're going to be good for the Bury Your Bookie show, we're going to have to do some more
We're going to have
work
to.
coming in the fall. And one of the things that I'm going to prepare myself in the next couple of weeks is we're going to get some seasonal props for the NFL and some season wins for the NFL. One of the things you got to look at with these props is that everybody wants to bet over because they got their player and their team and they want to go. Well, beware the injury bug. And I think that's where I'm going to put a lot of my focus on is what guys look like they could be prone to injuries, dominant players, and you'll see. So wide receivers sometimes get less injuries, but the running backs might be a side of unders. Like one of the big stories I've listened to is a guy who was all over the under in Saquon Barkley saying mathematically he had such a big year with touches, got paid. Maybe all this gears toward possibly he's been hurt most of his career. Now all of a sudden he got healthy for a year. Does the injury bug catch him? He's more or less not going to bet Saquon Barkley to win the rushing title. He's going to bet him more to bet under like 1,600 total yards or something. So you'll see some of these bets come in as we start researching around, but it will make it interesting.
Look on that one, Dave Wanstad ran Ricky Williams into the line of scrimmage 400 times during a season. The guy basically was never the same. He had to go smoke weed at the foothills of the Himalayas just to be able to deal with the pain, and lost his incentive to be the great running back that he was. All right, we have a few things coming up. This was always known as Black Wednesday. I don't know how you related to that back in the past when there was no action. Mm-hmm. Now the WNBA has seized that window of opportunity, and would you have to say that this was generally geared towards the wagering crowd, that they staged 5 games staggered beginning at 12 o'clock today? I don't know if you want to take a stab at any of these. I would have no idea whether or not to.
Let's take a shot, and I'll go after some handicapping and get to, as I log in to see the lines. Let me just tell you a little bit about what I'm hearing. That the home team covers 60% of the time, that there's a distinct home advantage.
Okay.
And home court advantage. And the last thing I had heard about this, which I thought was very, very interesting, was last night Caitlin Clark and the Fever were 15.5 point favorite over the weakest team in the league, the Sun. I looked at that and I said, boy, that's a big line at home. You like the home team. But what made me really like the game was they moved the game from the Mohegan Sun, which seats about 7,000, into the Fleet Center in Boston, and they sold it out. Wow. So I think when you look at that, a team like the Sun might get a little bit more fired up when Caitlin Clark comes to town, because now they get to play in a bigger venue in front of more people. There's always that feel, as you heard from, Christine Brennan, who you did a short show with a couple of weeks ago, about there just seems to be some kind of jealousy toward her, and there's kind of ladies might step up and play harder. But yeah, so it's very interesting. So if you look at home dogs today, you got the Sky. And I think Angel Reese is on the Sky, and they're getting 10 from the Dream today. That might be a home dog of interest. Back to back, the Liberty are laying 9.5 against the Fever, but Clark had a kind of a groin issue 30 seconds ago in the game, was taken out. So maybe you might want to look at the Liberty a little bit as a play today. Yeah, so there's a couple of things. No real home dogs. Storm and the Valkyries is 4.5. Seattle's pretty good, and Dallas and the Aces. Dallas has been one of the weaker teams, but they got the girl from Buckers are the girl from Connecticut, and the Aces have been a little bit down, and they're laying 6 on the road at Dallas for the late game tonight. So there's some action out there. I might be taking a shot at the home dog.
Did you ever think in your lifetime, Mike Jones?
No, I didn't think we'd be talking this. And by the way, I will tell you this:
when you were calling Louis to live Lipschitz back in Brooklyn, thinking, "Hey, I got to make a wager tonight," boy, he would have laughed at you if you were betting WNBA futures, or and in this case, games with the point spread. But interesting stat: you want to hit it 60% to make money? Just bet the home teams against the point spread in the WNBA.
Yeah, I mean that's what.
Are we ignoring the obvious here?
But then again, as soon as I pay attention to it, of course it goes down. So they go on like a 2-5 run, so it's kind of even out. But this is what they're saying on these guys who dig into this, and some of the stuff is you listen to these shows, and I try to gain a little bit of knowledge so I have an idea what I'm talking about. I think I do know a lot for 40 years in this business, but you got to really look at it like there's a lot of different ways, and with so much to bet. I always heard this from one of the guys I highly respect as a gambler. When they have to set lines on hundreds and hundreds of games, they're going to miss a couple.
Sure.
So that's what you got to kind of dig into and find one. Maybe we get 10 with the Sky, even though they're not that good on that early game today. I might take a chance with the home dog there getting 10 and see what happens.
I hope they mention this day at my funeral. I was
Well,
talking to a guy about getting 10 with the Sky.
yeah, I was there.
On what used to be known as Black Wednesday, it was a day off. You had to go, get somebody to get you a few extra tabs of Xanax there, so you could get through the day because you were getting the shakes. All right, well, one of your favorite events, and this is an interesting betting event from a lot of different angles because it does become more wide open. I think when they go to the links course and the Open, you have certain guys that seem to perform there very well. You're always thinking the Europeans are going to have a big advantage because they're more accustomed to growing up with these kind of conditions. I saw a guy in the Scottish Open literally deliberately hit a two-hopper to short. But we were talking about how a grounder actually is a good and effective shot sometimes on these courses. Scotty Scheffler, of course, is going to be the favorite, and I think you're getting plus 550. Wasn't terrible in the Scottish tournament that just took place, the Scottish Open. He was 9 under off the pace. I didn't realize Gotterup. I thought he was a nondescript European schmenk, but he's an American.
No. Yes.
Got her up, and he got her up all right. Got her up in time to win that. I don't know if that's an indicator he's going to go back to back. The usual suspects, very low odds. I tend to blow right by them. I don't know what's your rule of thumb here because I'm looking at Scheffler, Rory, Rahm, DeChambeau, and DeChambeau's actually 18-1. Rahm's 12-1. But I'm putting a line through all three of those guys because if they win, they're going to win without my money. Are you looking at anybody? You got a group of name guys at 25-1. Tommy Fleetwood Mac, who choked the other day when he had a chance to win his first PGA tournament. The guy never wins, so I never bet him to win.
Right.
You got Schauffele, who obviously is very good at this sort of thing. He was
champion.
9 under. Can he go back to back? Oberg is 25-1 with Hatton and Lowry. So that's not bad. I mean, you look at those five guys at 25-1. And I'm thinking I'm looking even further outside there. And then I didn't realize this. It shows you how old school I am. I'm trying to pick a winner, but you can bet these guys to finish in the top 40 and get a price.
Right.
Guys. So what are your thoughts? Any preliminary?
I watched this kid from the very beginning, Joaquin Neiman. I know he went over
Oh, you love that.
raise money. I love him. And I think he's got a game. He's won on the Live Tour this year. He's always really in contention there. Again, only 54 golfers in a 3-day event. But I find it fascinating. He was 20-1 to win the Masters, 30-1 to win the PGA and the U.S. Open. And now he's 60-1 to win the Open. So I kind of like, why not? Now you're really getting a price on the guy. So I might throw $1 or $2 on him just because I like the player and I'm getting a fair price. But the guys that I'm focusing on are the 30 to 35-1 guys.
Yeah.
Turtle Hatton, the Victor Hovland, and the Robert McIntyre. McIntyre put on a great show along with Hovland in the U.S. Open. Terrell Hatton was also in there a little bit late. We thought he would have a chance to win. So these are the three guys that were recently tested and played well. You got Shane Lowry also at a 35-1, a defending champion at Royal Point Rush. Not defending champion of the Open, but won there the last time it was played. I like some of these British and English guys and Europeans to come in there and play well. So you might put a little bit of something there on to sprinkle a little bit on them at 30-1. But I'm with you. I'm staying away from the short page of the board and looking a little bit long. Ludwig Aberg, who I always think has got the game of talent, but somehow gets messed up this week. He had a rough back 9. I think he was 5 over for 3 holes around the 13, 14, and 15 holes. And he's at 28-1 for defending champion Schauffele at 22-1. Yeah, I mean, I see there's a couple of ways to sprinkle. I'm going to look at some individual matchups, but here's two that I find very fascinating in the individual matchups. And if we can go back before Live, would these be prices that would be fair? So Harry Hall is laying 135 over Dustin Johnson. Wow, really? Guys won a major. Who is Harry Hall? Might know him by his hat. What he wears, and I think that's interesting.
I would know him from Monty Hall.
That's right, and he's favored over Dustin Johnson. And then you got Jordan Spieth is laying 150 over Brooks Koepka.
Wow,
to have a better finish. I look down and see Koepka at 100-1 at 100-1. Brooks Koepka was probably last year at this time was probably a 20-1 shot.
Yeah.
So how they've changed the odds and how far they've fallen is a very interesting story here. So will one of these Live guys that was always so great and played well when they were in the PGA Tour step up, or did the money spoil them enough that they don't work on their game as hard as these younger and PGA Tour and European Tour guys do? So a lot of fascinating stuff that to look at. We'll be watching this weekend.
Yeah, I was looking at this chart about pick a guy to win, and you're thinking, look, the field is what 150, maybe more. Very difficult to pinpoint the winner, no matter how great of a golf handicapper you claim to be. It's somewhat arbitrary. There's such parity all the way through, and then you have the oddball conditions that are always there at the Open. I don't know what the weather's going to be like, but it's usually pretty crummy for the most part. Otherwise, these guys end up destroying par. I'm looking at this guy here. He's 250 to 1. Nicholas Norgard.
Okay.
He was a factor in the Scottish Open, at least briefly. So you get 250 to 1 if he wins it, 30 to 1 if he's a top 5, 13 to 1 if he's top 10, plus 550 if he's top 20, and plus 190 if he finishes in the top 40. So I don't know. I might sprinkle 20 across the board on all of that, right? I guess top 40, that doesn't do you a whole lot of good. You're talking about laying out $100. You would really need them to finish in the top 20 to make money. But if you hit on them all, this is like having everything. And the guy running back, I got it all. I got the winner.
Yeah, you get that ticket. You better print it out and show it on the show, and then you say, "Look what I did."
If you took it for $10, so you're talking about 2,500 on the win position. And you're getting $300 back for your 10 if he finishes in the top 5.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I mean, this is the kind of guy that usually pops up there and ends up having a couple of good rounds. The other thing I like is that you can bet every round. You can bet all kinds of crazy stuff. You can hedge off if you're in a good position. There are a million ways to bet this. I never thought I would find golf wagering to be among the most fascinating stuff that you could participate in. But if you're looking at it as entertainment also, people, you do get if your guy's in contention or you're anywhere in range of maybe cashing a ticket, there's nothing more exciting than watching shot after shot.
Yeah, and I'll give you a quick story real quick. Buddy of mine is up in Detroit at the event up there a couple weeks ago, and he gets invited by DraftKings into the booth, and he calls me and says, "You're not going to believe this. They have opening lines being shot out on a microphone on what each guy will make on a hole that was coming up."
Wow.
So him and his son decided that they would go even money, that they made par. So it was par was even money, and then they did all the guy made bogey was plus 200, if the guy made a birdie was plus 400, and they bet it, and they ended up hitting like 14 out of 18 golfers. They all made pars going in and end up making money off of just an even money bet, just trying to do it, trying to every par. So he thought that was interesting that they were trying to put out that as each group came through, they tried to do that, to make a bet on what the guy would score on the particular hole on the 18th hole. Very interesting. But I just thought he was in it, and all because DraftKings he's in the DraftKings box, and they're coming up with creative ways at these events in which to bet. He said him and his son had a field day with it. So and these guys wouldn't bet golf if you paid them, but they're there and they start pounding away at it because they're at the event. So it's that little impulse buy, when you see at the supermarket at the cashier that everybody seems to grab something off the shelf. It's the same thing in sports.
Let me get a couple of these scratch offs that I never hit on.
Right.
Although I do have a buddy that had a scratch off, and he scratches it off, and the woman he was with was bitching at him that he was going to go way out of his way to get this cup of coffee because he liked a special place there in New Jersey. So he goes out of his way to get his pork roll and cheese and whatever special coffee they had there. Picks up 2 scratch off tickets in this a little grocery store kind of place that he was in. And so he starts scratching them off, and they said, "Hey, look, I got a winner here." And at first he sees like he thought it was $50. Then he keeps scratching off the part where it shows the payoff, and it ended up being 50,000.
That's awesome.
And then he went out of it. If he hadn't gone to that place, and then it's a hassle to collect. He had to drive to like Trenton from wherever the hell he was to go to the actual office. And of course, they withheld much of it. I guess he was able to claim it back, although that's changing. But
sure.
Nonetheless, yeah. But I have no luck with that kind of thing. If I bought 1,000 scratch-off tickets, all of them would be losers. I just have that little mess on the floor there that you get, like if your house was infested with termites or something. All right. Good luck, Mike, with everything. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll catch you again tomorrow.
Have me. Yep. We'll look forward to watching a good Open this year. It starts at 4:00 on USA if you're interested on the East Coast, and 1:00 if you're out West. So it's pretty interesting. You get home from a late night of drinking, and now all of a sudden you got golf on at 1:00.
Live action.
Very easy. It's great.
Better. All right, my friend. Thanks so much for being with us. Mike Jones, ladies and gentlemen. For Mike, I'm Jeff DeForest. Enjoy the day, everybody. Black Wednesday, no longer dark. And we'll see you tomorrow on the next edition of Bury Your Bookie.